All right, greetings everybody. It is time for a review of Volk. We're going to be taking a look at all of the data. We're going to take a look at his stats and everything. And we're going to make a bit of a call about him. And just, you know what? I'm maybe changing my mind about Volk. Maybe. But you'll have to wait and stay till the end of this video to see exactly what I think. But hey, let's get going. So first off, let's just preview his limit burst because these are always looking really cool lately. One thing I'll always say is that the limit burst in this game, pretty awesome. We got a fire. Wait, is that a fire limit burst? A fire unit's limit burst that actually has fire in it? I mean, sure, there's some darky, scary crystals or whatnot, but that's an actual fire limit burst for a fire unit. Oh my god. What is going on? All right, so 70 cost Volk is available now on JP and will probably be available within the next month on global unless something happens like end of service, but whatever. That's another bridge to cross later. And the thing we're going to talk about really quickly is the fact that Volk is available as a unit to be purchased in a similar way to units that have come recently before, such that it are basically like 70 cost units such as Shadow Links as well as Kitane. So that's great news for anybody who is looking for something kind of essentially a little bit easier to get, something that you don't necessarily have to gacha. He is the same price as the previous units, which if you're curious about just a reference to what the price is, it's essentially this. This is Unicorn Overlord. It's a game that came out very recently for the Switch and the PS5. It's a full-fledged strategy game, and this unit, 200 shards, the unit, plus a few extra little bonuses, basically 1.5 times the cost of something like this, a full strategy game, that in a market that is very, very small. It's not just me who said this, just in case you think I'm being an asshole. The Final Fantasy Tactics producer, the game that this game is kind of based on, that a whole bunch of you really love, told people to go buy this fucking game. Go buy this fucking game. If you buy this and you don't buy this, you're an idiot. This is not a promo, but something that I just want to get out really quickly. Either way, the unit is available for purchase for 6k paid Lapis, and if you take issue with anything that I just said, I don't know, maybe you're an idiot, whatever, who cares? Let's continue on with the video, and we're going to go in here and talk about this unit. Look at his stuff on Wotv Calc for a data reference. I'm going to throw him in here with basically my mishmash of a fire team and see what his stats look like. I'm also going to be comparing this to some other more recent tanks. So taking a look here with the fire VCs that I have, about 14k HP, which is pretty good, 1000 magic, 62 defense, which basically paints him in the light that he is a anti-physical tank, not so much a anti-magic tank. Fairly decent accuracy too, 99 speed, which is pretty nice, 4 move, 2 jump, and a ton of single target resistance and absolutely 0 AoE resistance with the current build. But of course, there is a new BC next week, and that BC may change it overall. Now, next, we're going to take a look at his resistances. Just in the party, we're looking at 40% slash resistance, 15% magic resistance, 28% shooting resistance, and some strike resistance too, which across the board, pretty nice. His one weakness is his own damage type, which is a little bit concerning because there are some powerful water spear based units that could potentially counter this unit. Now I say potentially, because we're still early on in this video, but it seems pretty good. Also, stun resistance is kind of nice against certain mages out there. Confusion is okay, and sleep is also pretty good in combined with these two, because VV plus the new Helena are two that use these status effects, so this is good to have some resistance against that. So just for comparison, we're going to jump over to the wind base party that I have right now. Take a look at a 120 version of Dario. Now, this is just for comparison's sake. This unit does have trust runes, so there is that kind of difference there. It does kind of show roughly where these two units are and what the kind of stats are. And this is important because these two units have come out relatively close to each other. Another unit that we can throw in recently, because apparently we're just in tank central, is a ice-based unit like Oldoa, who is a different kind of tank, but basically looking at this, now this is of course friend unit, so it doesn't have trust mastery runes, but you can see here that quite a few of these units have very similar properties in certain ways. So if we just scroll down here, take a look at her resistances, and of course the VCs that are available to me and whatnot will make a difference, much as you would expect. Just going back to Dario again, because he is one unit that I actually skipped in terms of resistance. You can also see right here. So there you go. There's a broad sweeping look at just different units that have come out very recently on JP, but all fill a similar role of being a tank. And with that, we kind of get a barometric of what current tanks look like. 140s versus, or 100 cost units versus 70 cost units. And of course, the VCs that support them. And Volke will get a new VC next week. He also should be on the most recent one on JP, which is something I want to bring up really quickly, just as an aside. Because if we take a look at this VC here, this VC, well, doesn't have spears, but does have great swords, which makes me curious whether UR Mont, given that he's featured on the card, will be a actual greatsword unit. Probably won't have to wait too terribly long. I have a feeling that Mont will be our April 1st character, and no, that is not an April Fool's joke. All right, but taking a look, let's take a look at the data. So first, new spear for him, 165 for a magic. So, I mean, there isn't too terribly much in the way of support for magic spears for equipment, so this is pretty good. Also for him, he gets single target resistance of 8, initial reaction block rate of 30, and increased spirit for 1 turn when he performs a critical hit, which is kind of interesting because he doesn't seem to be overly built as a anti-magic tank, but maybe this is more support towards that. Pierce attack up by 15 is also pretty good. Taking a look at Volke himself, he is a 70 cost semi-limited. I know what it says here that it's no, but he is another story unit, which means most of the time he's out of the pool, but sometimes he comes back when his other units come back from another story. 3 move, 1 jump, Grimoire Master, and Messenger. For people who don't recognize this one, Kotodama Wielder, basically Sakura's job, and it's pretty good. Armor is a great thing for him because it does allow him access to one of the best pieces of armor in the entire game, which is really good for tanks. His Trust Mastery is an accessory, 312 HP, 8 defense, 6 spirit, and accuracy. Trust Mastery rune, critical evasion, and AoE resistance, which is a good thing for him since he doesn't have a ton of AoE resistance. It'd be generally okay for other tanks looking to up their AoE resistance potentially. And critical evasion is just kind of, I like it more and more as sometimes critical units come out more and more. But anyway, master ability is boosting his agility and magic. Ability is single target resistance and debuff weakening 20, which is kind of good in combination with some else in it. Looking at skills, we're going to jump down to the bottom here. Kotodama Wielder gives him some accuracy. Even though I think he has decent accuracy to begin with, it's pretty nice to have this 100% hit chance if it is good in the matchup. As for Grimoire Master, you're looking at, Protect, and the effect that Protect does end up giving him, which is more defense debuff resistance, but it does count something good for him. Also gives him a chance to cause confusion and reduces physical damage barrier of 7,500 HP, which is pretty good. This Grimoire Master does give him some up capability, but casting time might be a slight concern. Looking at the main part of his job has no casting time whatsoever, he's very unlikely to really get support for essentially anti-casting. Looking at Limit Burst here, select 2 targets, increase pierce resistance for himself for 30 for 3 turns. Now, we'll come back to this in a second. 200% mod on it, grants regen, which is good for a tank who has a lot of HP. What you're giving up, however, for his 2 sub jobs, not his Limit Burst, but I kind of jumped around there, Piercing damage with a chance to paralyze, which, given that he's mage, high faith, maybe a chance for this to happen. Good. Increase magic by 40% per 3 turns for allies is kind of a nice bonus. Also, 20 spirit penetration is good for supporting a mage team. So if you're not running a mage team, not that mages are usually short of self buffs, you could probably cut this and get Grimoire Master in there. I don't know if I like Kotodama unless it's a specific use where you're looking for accuracy, but Grimoire Master seems generally pretty good and probably the one that I like the best. Now to the main part of his kit. His new counter ability counters slash magic damage with reducing the damage taken by 30%, so he is a bit of a specialist when it comes to his counter. He does have counter all damage by reducing it by a certain amount, which is pretty nice. That is just generally better. If the meta is more towards maybe spears and shooting, then maybe you want this, but other than that, he has options for both. Now his Grimoire Master chance to counter all damage decreasing chance of being targeted and increasing AoE resistance. Bit of a hate trade-off, but I think that's the last thing you want as a tank. So moving on. As for his main job, 2 new abilities, one that increases move and jump, which honestly is pretty good. I can attest to this because it was good for me with snow up until recently. So I do like it for that reason. Gets him a little bit ahead and taking the damage first and not rather good. Defense, chance of being targeted, debuff effect weakening of 15, which stacks with the other bit that we talked about. Reducing physical damage the larger the attack, which is kind of interesting since he has so much single target. Maybe AoEs are the thing that the AI is going to use against him, which then makes this ability just generally better. His main one is the one you're always going to be running. I think that move and jump is potentially really nice to switch out for something else, such as defense, spirit penetration, or whatnot. So I'm going to say that this is just generally pretty good, but I don't know. I kind of like Grimoire Masters a little bit better because it kind of synergizes a little bit more, but I'm never going to knock the movement after the... As for his main job, we have things such as piercing damage, decreasing agility, reducing physical damage with the wall of text ability. As you can see, there's a little bit not translated down here, but we talked about it previously. It's essentially the aura effect, which is something that I think a lot of people are interested in. Reducing magical damage taken by 30% per 3 turns. Reducing physical damage taken by multiple turns. So these effects are all stacking with everything else that he has. And continuing on, looking at his other stuff, he can decrease defense penetration by 30, attack by 40, and decrease spirit penetration also by 30 on a single ability, which is pretty good. And has a little bit extra range, so his AI might be more prone to casting one, which is cool. As for 200% chance for auto revive for himself, when a friendly unit is in range, automatically casts another skill, which if we just take a look here at the kanji, match it up, increases single target resistance 25 for allies, so great for people who are looking for that. I think though that when you have a tank, he is going to be the thing that's targeted, and if another unit is close, it's going to hit with an AoE, not with a single target attack. It may try and hit with a single target attack that selects multiple targets, but I think the AI is generally a little bit better than that, which means that this probably won't happen, and the AO will probably choose an AoE, which kind of circumvents it. But if you stack enough AoE resistance, you should do that quite nicely. Damaging a target as well as piercing damage, single target resistance 5, and dispel, ignore fatal damage. Getting off of this big AoE here is generally pretty nice. You can see the AoE here, and there you go. That's essentially Volke's entire kit. Now, as for Volke, where he could potentially fit in. Now, let's talk about this, because there are different places that this unit could be. The 2 main fire teams that you essentially see, besides the wind unit with fire units behind, which isn't really necessarily a thing that you would want this unit for, because then you're kind of baiting people in with a wind unit and hitting with some powerful fire units. That's not this guy. His DPS is probably not going to be incredibly high, but very similar towards Dario, who felt pretty lackluster, and Oldoa, whose damage is also pretty lackluster. But again, it's tank. Tanks are meant for soaking up damage, not necessarily dealing damage. And his damage isn't as relevant as Oldoa, who is trying to absorb part of the damage done to himself. Volke here is essentially just trying to survive, and that's a lot of what his kit is more geared toward. Point being, that's not the team he wants to be. Fire evasion, again, not necessarily the thing you want to be running with fire evasion. You kind of just want to stack as much evasion as possible. Don't think that's where he's at. So next up is fire magic, which feels very, still, competitive with Soul and Shawls. And as such, there's also the option of limited cost, specific damage types, and off elemental types. So let's just talk about all of that. First off, Spear VCs. I want to save that for last, so let's go back and talk about the idea of Soul, Bulk, as well as Shawls. That is one of the things that I think is generally maybe looking kind of the best with this. And the one I'm kind of expecting to see some trials and on YouTube of other people who want to pay the upfront and get him and use him and whatnot. I think that that's generally probably where he will be best, because there's a lot of synergy there with magic type attacks, which is pretty nice. That team is kind of wanting just a good tank. Soul is already pretty damn damage resistant, and Shawls is an incredibly good healer, so it feels like a very, very, very well-rounded team that probably only has in pretty high difficulty with water, which was something that it kind of already had high difficulty with. However, that team could also run into problems with Dario and Spear-based, which are primarily wind, so something to be considered about. Now, as for low cost, this team would essentially be 240 cost, which definitely is appealing given the way that Gumi has costed some of its events recently. But I do want to put out that JP's next cost limited event, which this unit seems to be maybe ideally for, is not actually for this unit or this team that we have mentioned, because it's actually a 230 cost. Gumi actually dunked the cost quite low, so you can't even run Shawls, Soul, and this guy. You need to run something even lower, cutting potentially Shawls from the team or Soul from the team, and whether that's good enough or not, I'm not entirely sure, but it is something to be aware of, that Gumi has kind of slashed the costs on this, and future cost events in the future are subject to whatever the heck Gumi wants to do. So just keep that in mind if you are really gung-ho on the whole costing-based thing. As for synergy with other elements, it could be theoretically run with other spear-based teams, but you're going to be needing to potentially get a fair amount of spear VCs that are not reliant on physical damage, but just general spear-based damage. And whether that's even worth it for him necessarily, I don't really know. On a wind-based spear team such as Fly Glassy, who potentially could use the single target resistance and just the resistance in general, that's pretty good here. It also protects you against her natural weakness of ice. However, Dario is potentially just a better overall tank for wind with more synergy and whatnot. So it is kind of a consideration that if you already have Dario, this unit may not cross the line enough to really push you into wanting this guy in the first place. Now, of course, this is all theoretical. This is all based on data and numbers and whatnot. And when talking about synergy between different elements, with fire, it's either with lightning, since there's some crossover there, or with wind. And now wind already has Dario, so whether or not you want to get another tank on top of Dario, poorly phrased that was, that's up to you. But I honestly think you're quite good already with Dario, seeing that he is a pretty strong tank even into the ice matchups. Trust, I've had a good amount of knowledge, but in general, Dario is just a very, very, very strong unit. So yeah, This unit feels very apropos for the cost, but for people who are looking for a unit like this, I think it's generally pretty great. As for synergies with job-based VCs, I'm kind of a little bit anxious to say too much because I'd like to see what his new VC, the VC that will be coming out next week, whether that will push him more towards a certain. Always comment on it later in a initial judgment once we've seen some more performance of this guy. But hey, I think that this unit is looking generally pretty overall strong. Now, before we wrap up this video, I do want to say a couple of things. First off, I want to talk about both Ultima and Game 8's recommendations, because they are another source of information and another opinion that is different from mine. Overall, this guy from Ultima has gotten a 9.7, which, as I say, Ultima and Game 8 are usually just guidelines, much like my reviews, and have rated him a S+. As for... Now, Ultima rates their units as S+, being essentially the highest, and as for Game 8 has rated him an S out of a ranking of SSS. So there's a couple other varying opinions of this unit. Generally, I think he looks pretty great for the cost. And last thing I want to say is, apparently, since some people have commented saying that when I say a unit is really bad, he ends up being really great. So I hope that I've helped this unit truly find success. However, of course, we'll have to wait and see. Global has a few extra fire units and might make a little bit of a difference as to where this unit goes. And of course, future spear-based support will effectively determine how great this is. Now, with that all being said, that wraps up the video. Thank you so much for watching. And here is a little bit of a bonus for people who have stayed to the very end. I actually think that Volke is a very mid-tier unit. I don't think that he is incredible. While he does have a generally very rounded kit for the cost, he does seem to be very, very similar to the situation of other units that have come out that have been 70 cost on Wotv recently, which have been generally good, but not amazing. Shadowlynx and Kitane are the ones that specifically come to mind. They are also following the exact same pattern of what feels like slightly rushed units of another story, because they are trying to get to the end of another story. This is also another unit being cranked out with a fixed cost, which essentially makes gacha for him much less appealing, since, well, you can essentially just get him. But I did mean what I said earlier, even though it came off a little bit mean-spirited. I don't think you should buy this unit at all. I think you should go support a game like this way more than you should ever support spending a gacha like on this. If you take offense to that, or you're like, haha, fuck you, Umbra, I'm gonna do this just to spite you, you owned me. Good job. But hey, there you go. I think that Volke is much in the similar line to other 70 cost units, but I think that Gumi doing the next cost event at 230 is a real kick to the nuts for anybody who is excited about the potential team. And it kind of shows that maybe Gumi is trying to force people into costing. I also think that it's like more holo VCs. If you haven't gotten a lot of the more holo VCs, some of the spear-based VCs that are much more limited on JP than they are on global, such as the Christmas one, then it can be even more of a tough sell. So anyway, now that you've listened to the actual thing that I wanted to say at the end of this video, I'm going to reward you with a poll, just for fun, because I don't really care so much about resources for saving anymore. We're just playing for fun right now. Volke will, my opinion of Volke will continue to change as I get more data about him and see how he ends up being once more time has passed, because data, you can take a look at it and it can support certain theories, but practice and how the meta shifts will do more to say whether the unit is good or not. We didn't get him because it's whatever. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Didn't even get a spear-based VC. Wolf. Later.